look at the amount of just sandy, minerally junk that's living inside the coolant jacket around this engine. What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. Call this a bonus video because I just thought of it while I'm working on this engine, which is part of another video. So, this engine, this is a REW engine from a 1992 Mazda RX7, twin turbo, right-hand drive, JDM RX7. Super low miles. Now, it has about 25,000 miles on it, this engine does, okay? Never been rebuilt, never been touched, and it came to me because it has a coolant seal leak. Alright, so it had some coolant coming out of the turbos, drinking coolant, pressurizing the cooling system. Not ideal, okay? On these engines, they're notorious for cracking the coolant groove in the iron. Fortunately, so far, because we're midway through, I haven't seen an iron that is cracked, but I have yet to get to the front rotor, which is the one that was drinking coolant, okay? Now, the reason I wanted to make this video is because one of the key points that I want to make for you, okay, as an aspiring rotary owner, as a person who owns one of these, is that low miles does not mean no problems, okay? Low miles doesn't mean that your car is going to go 100,000 miles without braking, just like a car that was bought new and had 100,000 miles put on it in a year. If your car's 30 years old with 20,000 miles, don't expect it to just, you can jump in it and drive it and reach 100K without any issues like it did when it was new, okay? And here's why. This engine is a perfect example of this, okay? The coolant seal failure. You can see this engine sat. You know, this car didn't get driven that much. There was not a lot of heat cycles put through this thing. And as I've taken it apart, you know, bolts are stuck. The front hub bolt, I literally broke my half-inch drive ratchet trying to get the front hub bolt off. And that's just because when these things sit, everything gets stuck together, everything dries up. You know, steel and aluminum, that interface starts to oxidize. Things don't like to come apart. And that's the problem with having one with super low miles. So, we're going to continue to tear this down. You guys are going to get to see exactly what caused this engine to fail. But yeah, this is a perfect example of buying a car with super low miles, so you expect to not have issues with it. And yes, it's a really nice car, probably nicer than other ones, but there still is this inherent risk of like, hey, once you start introducing heat to this engine again, it might have issues. So, let's get this center plate off, this rotor off, get everything organized. The next video that you guys are going to see, especially pertaining to this engine, will be the entire teardown and rebuild of an engine with blown coolant seals, because this one's low miles. Everything else seems to be in reasonably decent shape, which we'll go over once we have the whole thing apart. But, yeah, it's a good fun project. Good fun project. Let's get this thing tore down. These usually go super quick. They're super easy, so back to it.
First kind of like out there thought as far as how this could operate. It would somehow be affecting all sorts of like radioactive rocks. And
Level 2 of engine teardown. We've reached the front rotor. And let me tell you, this is just exactly the surprise that you don't want to find on your 4,000 mile FDRX7 that's been sitting for 30 years, right? So look at the amount of just sandy, minerally junk that's living inside the coolant jacket around this engine. So you can see as well, just, you know, this rotor and housing is the one that's been consuming water. I didn't see any issues, which we'll go look at it here in a second, on the center iron over there. But you can see just the pitting, the oxidation on this rotor versus the rear one. You know, it's kind of a mess. Now, the housing, not really any crazy issues. You can see some streaks down in here, which I won't wipe it off. I'll make sure to get this off so you guys can see it out of where it's currently sat. But, man, the front of this thing is just not fired up. And this is one of those problems as well that can lead to more problems, right? So if your car is burning coolant and you decide, man, it's probably just a turbo leaking coolant, it's burning off, and this, that, and the other, and then you go park it for the winter, and you come back in the spring and go to crank it over, your combustion chamber could have rusted shut, and then your engine is locked up. Because if this sits full of coolant, you know, maybe it freezes, maybe you're just running water, all that. And it could really hurt this. So you need to make sure, guys, even on those super low mileage cars, that you're taking good care of them and you're understanding what's going on. You know, don't just park them in your museum and expect them to work perfectly all the time. Because especially when they're original, you know, unless they're being heat cycled and being driven around or started at least every week, you're never going to catch a problem like this. And one of these problems could be catastrophic for not only the value, but just like the ability to drive your car or the ability to keep its condition, you know, because of a 4,000 mile FD, right, if its engine sprung a coolant seal leak randomly, now you got to pull that engine and rebuild it and put it back in. Let me tell you, people on Bring a Trailer, if you say your engine is rebuilt in your FD value, chop it. They just don't like that. They like that original goodness, and this is one way that's going to really crash that value of your mint perfect FDs if you let something come bite you in the butt like this, you know, because you don't know what the inside of the engine looks like. You can look inside your combustion chambers and stuff, you pull the turbos, but I don't have a way to look and find beach sand inside the engine. Woo! Alright, let's organize all the parts on this rotor so we know where every seal goes, and then put this apart. I'm going to assume we're going to find that issue on that front iron. So, well, guys, this is about the worst case scenario you're ever going to want to see for your low mile FD engine, because yikes. Alright, guys, as y'all just heard me say, this isn't quite the complete worst case scenario, because we could have had a broken center iron and a broken rear iron, or the inside of his engine could have just been torched. Fortunately, it's only this front iron, which is where they notoriously come apart. They get awfully thin through here. So, here's our problem. Now, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, y'all have seen the sand. We're going to try to take this coolant seal out, and we'll see how much of this rubber comes apart here. I guess I'll just try to grab it right here. Oh man, that's nasty. Oh yeah, it's about the whole thing. Yeah, this is not good, guys. Not good. Look at all that. See, that just came all apart. The fire ring, effectively, the outer ring of your coolant seal is much stiffer. The orange section is soft rubber. The inner and outer are to help protect against the heat. You can see how that was pushed out into these areas, and then that's basically what was holding that whole section together. So we'll take this out all the way around. Look at all of this nightmare, guys. Ladies, when your car guy who owns an RX7 goes to bed and can't sleep and whatever, he's worrying about his RX7 because of this video. Sorry. Dang. I don't think I've ever seen one that has broken clear off like that. So you can see even this section right here where it's oxidized and the coolant groove is wider there. Dang. That clean broke off. I mean, look at the casting, just broke straight off both places. Shoo. And there's really not even enough real estate. Sometimes if you see them crack in one of these longer sides, it will, you could glue. I've seen people glue a side seal or glue an apex seal spring to help support the coolant seal, but I don't think there's any fix in this one. And the unfortunate part is that this is cast iron, so you really can't weld to it that well. I'm sure you could come in here and weld this whole area, build it all back up, and then come through with like a mill and recut the groove. You know, now I'm definitely not throwing this iron away because we hold on to stuff. At a minimum, this is a good iron to practice porting on for somebody. But until there's a sustainable way to fix this, you know, this iron's basically junk. It's really unfortunate. There's not a single lick of step wear on this deal. So, you know, and this engine really didn't have that much carbon in it. Man, this just sucks. That just sucks. So, that 25,000 mile FD, or that 4,000 mile, or that 10,000 mile, or that whatever mile FD that didn't get driven that much, it might not be the move, guys, because you still might be spending $5,000 on a new engine. Fortunately, so in this case, right, like what would I recommend moving forward? Since now we've accepted the defeat that our super low mile FD needs a new engine, and now it's not all original anymore, and it's forever not a Meckham Barrett Jackson bring a trailer epic original museum purchase, right? We've just, the blink of an eye, devalued our car. What could you do to fix it? So right over here in this box is a brand new from Mazda REW engine for an FD RX7. You could buy one of those and just stick it in there. I think they're like $6 or $7 now at the time of this video. I know that they're kind of hard to get, so if you can get one or you've bought one, expect to wait, back order, etc., etc. But unfortunately, that's kind of the stomach that, or the parts that you're going to have to stomach to get your FD fixed, you know. Or you could find a shop or find somebody like me that could build you or rebuild your engine, you know. So like this one, we're going to try to find probably a brand new front iron, if not a really good condition used one, because the rest of this engine is in really good shape. So that's kind of our method there, you know. And guys, look at this. These are the original heat shields that I took off of these twin turbos. These things are perfect, you know, aside from like that 10 mil bolt was definitely going to break, you know, and a couple of these are broken, but the shields are perfect. The turbos are in really good shape, you know. The manifold, you can see the front rotor up here is darker than the rear. That's where the coolant was coming out. You know, everything was in super good shape on this car. So when you see these cars and you look at it like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's never been driven. It's in great shape. It's going to last forever. It might not. Here's that front housing I mentioned a bit ago. See where you can see the watermarks in the edges of the housing? So if this engine had sat for an extended period of time with water in it, it would become all rusty and nasty, and then it would really be unusable. The rotors would be terrible. And when all that happens, not to just keep getting on a further aside, but when all that happens, your rotors, when I take your engine apart, will look like this. This is a rotor from an RX8 that had a coolant seal failure that sat in a field for 9 or 8 years. And this rotor is effectively a tire chalk or a new parking brake for whatever vehicle you're driving. This thing is roached, it's wasted, I would never use it. So, alright, that's today's bonus video, because I'm taking this engine apart. And I was just, I'm really feeling for my buddy, because we were hoping it was just going to be a soft seal fix and update and put it back together, and it would still be a great low mileage engine. We were going to pretty much only change from the 3-piece Apex seals that come from the factory to a 2-piece style Mazda Apex seal. That was going to be my only recommendation as what to change. Do new oil control rings, coolant seals, and put the thing back together. But unfortunately, it looks like we are getting a new front iron, and then we'll effectively do the same thing, just with a new front iron. So we'll oil control rings, coolant seals, new front iron. Probably, the bearings didn't look terrible. Bearings are fine. So we'll probably keep the same bearings in it and everything, and put the deal back together. So buyer beware when you're buying a low mileage FD, because you never know. And I would say this principle applies exactly the same for piston engines too. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn about rebuilding these engines, I've got videos on everything on the channel. Go check it out, including in about a week when you want to see, or 2 weeks. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 weeks till we find an iron, actually, especially with the holidays. But when we find the parts, you'll see this thing go back together, and you'll see a complete, you know, how to rebuild an engine, only replacing the coolant seals video with all my tips and tricks for cleaning and organizing and stuff like that. So definitely check out the stuff on the channel. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Keep it rad. Letty's over there by the fire. Just ignore what's happening over here, guys. You'll see this eventually. It's coming. We're building things. Letty, I'm not going to make you jump for anything cool, but isn't that fire super warm, dog? Man, I don't know how you sit that close to the fire. Huh? Oh, now you're perked up. You see the camera. You're ready to be on camera, huh? Right? Yeah? Nice to meet you. Hey, nice to meet you. No? You don't want to shake my hand? I'll shake your hand. Nice to meet you. Peace, guys.